All right, good afternoon, Facebook, and welcome to another installment, segment, episode of Real Estate Talk Live. I'm your host with the most, Tony Martinez, broker of Xtreme Realty team, and I'm joined by my ever faithful and wonderful partner here. We have Omar Arcia of Arcia. I say it both ways because we have a multicultural audience out there. So I want to make sure everyone is represented. So, yes, now where's the applause thing? Because we have a live audience. Wow, they promised me a live audience. How long it'll stay this way? We better be on our game. But we have Omar here, who is our legal counsel. So one of our segments today is Ask Our Lawyer, where you, the consumer, you, the real estate agent, can ask away in terms of legal questions, real estate related. Don't ask about divorce and all that kind of stuff. That's another show.
Right.
Good to see you, Omar. How's it going, man?
Too.
Man, I love the look, man. Tell me about that look.
This is the summer look. You know, it's about 102 degrees outside. So I figured wearing a dark jacket is not the best type of outfit for South Florida weather. So I went the traditional Southern route today.
I like it, man.
Want to clean up. Want to keep it nice and cool.
Man, when I first saw you, I thought, I need a glass of lemonade.
Iced tea.
Iced tea.
A little iced tea.
A little rocking chair. A little out there on the show. And maybe that would be a good segment for us to do.
We'll do that next time. We'll go out to to a plantation or something like that.
There you go.
Iced tea.
Yes, okay.
Listen, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all the audience out there. We're really honored that you would take time from your schedule today and from your time during the day to watch the show and become educated and up to speed on all the different real estate issues that can impact your profession, that can impact your clients and your customers in what you do. And the other thing I want to tell the audience out there is tell your friends about the show. Let them know what you've discovered on Facebook Live, that there's a show out there that's directed to real estate professionals. Send them a notification today. Send them an email. Send them a tweet or whatever. Let them know that what you discovered out there is really benefiting real estate professionals, and that a 1 hour investment of your time during the week can pay off in huge dividends by you becoming a better real estate professional, by you standing out of the crowd of real estate professionals out there that can help you be more successful. So I request that you let your friends and your family know about this show and about what we're doing here, which I think is very interesting, very unique, and we're every week we try to take it up to another level, right?
Yeah, it's constantly evolving. I mean, last week's show we had a live audience, and that was kind of fun. And we figured maybe some of these shows will also do it. It's constantly evolving. Got a little PowerPoint action going on here as well today. So I'm not sure. Maybe the lights. Maybe we should try with the lights off to see, because by me looking here, they can't really see the screen all that much. But Omar brings up a good point. The show is gaining traction every single week, and we want it to be organic in growth. So you right now that are watching the show, share it. Share it on your timeline and let other people know about it. And understand that the show is not just for real estate professionals. It's also geared to the consumer. We feel that we're all working together to accomplish the American dream, and that is to buy a home, to have that piece of the pie. And if we could all work together as opposed to working against each other, it could be a happier resolution. So once again, Real Talk Live, before we get too far into the program, let's thank our wonderful sponsor. Everybody, yay, applause. Thank you. New World Title of Davie helps make this show possible. So for all of your closing needs, keep New World in mind. So here's what we have today. We're actually getting to the point where we're breaking this down into segments. Can you believe that?
That's what our goal was from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And eventually, organically started growing, and we said let's do it this way, let's do it that way, and all of a sudden we've seen shows like we had last week were just phenomenally action.
Yeah, wasn't Marty fantastic?
It was
Marty
great.
Carey, the Broward County tax appraiser. A property appraiser, came in here and just blew everyone away with the content.
Well, it was just so much information. I mean, I was taking notes feverishly because he was giving so much great information, and then he was so generous with his time too. I mean, the guy was just telling, just email me. I want to help you. I want to help you get tax exemptions.
Yeah.
Which is very refreshing from from a property appraiser, is that he wants to help you get tax exemptions.
No, it was great, and that was well worth it. I liked how we were able to segue from that into the rest of our show, and we talked about a lot of cool issues. So what do we have in store today? Well, it occurred to me that there may be some folks out there right now that are thinking that they want to become a real estate agent. You know, so why not? All we do is drive around in Mercedes-Benz and make all kind of money. Isn't that right, audience? Yeah. So,
well, there's some real estate agents out there that want to be real estate agents.
that's a segment right there. That's a segment right there. So, you know, I said, all right, so let's do this. If I touch on what is it like, what's the life of a real estate agent all about, it really should also include what are some things that real estate agents can do to avoid the pitfall. I'll give an example. And I want to thank Mike, I'm going to butcher his name, Nimamoya, and forgive me now, from Van Dyke Mortgage. He sent me some stats. 84,000 people took the real estate exam in the state of Florida just last year alone. And so what happened is I get these creative spurts and I says, you know what? It almost feels like sometimes real estate agents are being produced on an assembly line. And I started looking and I said, I wonder if there's a graphic out there that could somehow, well, look at that. And so here's what happens. Right now, if you own a real estate school, you're not watching this show. You're out there counting your money. Because what's happening is scores of people are going out there and getting their real estate license because this is a ticket to print money, right?
Exactly. I mean, you get of the $42,000 that passed last year, only 20% will remain after 36 months. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people see this wonderful opportunity to become a real estate agent, but they don't realize that they actually have to do the work once they get out to make themselves successful. And believe it or not, this also happens to attorneys. Attorneys are coming out like a production line. We're opening up new law schools too, and attorneys are coming out and they're realizing, wait a second, I actually have to do the work to become an attorney. You mean clients aren't just going to show up in my door and be willing to hire me? The same thing with real estate agents.
Agreed. And you know what? In fairness, I've met some exceptionally hardworking real estate agents that just don't make it. They don't make it. So I like to touch on that because part of the audience out there, it could be a real estate agent that's struggling right now. I mean, we, Xtreme, as a broker, I buy the list. Every week I get 2 lists because real estate agents go, my goodness, everybody and their brother's calling me once I got the license. Well, there's a list of people that apply for the exam. We buy that list. And then there's a list of people that actually complete and pass the exam. We buy those lists as well. So you look at these and you see all these names and I always think, man, these folks are excited about their business. Then you look at the stats and so few of them are ever going to see their 2nd and 3rd year in the business. So why do so many agents fail? So I'll ask this question. What is the number one reason why so many agents fail? And I hate to take a negative tone, but this is the reality. You know, there's a lot of real estate agents out there. One of my jokes is that there's a crowd forming somewhere. If you throw a rock and it hits one of them, it's probably a real estate agent. Everybody and their brother has a license, okay? It's not difficult to get. In fact, that's one of my pet peeves. I really can't stand it in Florida. All you have to do is stay semi-awake for 63 hours and go through the course, pass a 100-question exam, and now you're given a license to go screw up someone's life, potentially. And a license that can make you 6 figures if you know what you're doing and apply yourself. So I have more respect for the states that put several hundred hours required to pass the exam, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, every year, like last year, 84,000 new licensees coming into the business. So when I ask this question in a classroom setting, I get all kind of answers, and all of them are semi-right, but I've yet to have one person ever get it completely right. And the number one reason is lack of sales. People say, well, it's because they don't have a business plan. Oh, because they're not organized. Well, no, that's all symptoms. The bottom line is you could be the most unorganized person in the world and be making money, and you're going to stay in the business, right? And you could be the most organized person in the world and you can have a wonderful detailed business plan, and if you're not bringing home a paycheck, you're not going to be in the business. As long as I've been in it, I've yet to see an agent get a commission check and say, I'm out. You know, more than likely they're going to stay in as a result of that check. So what are some of the contributing factors to so many agents dropping out? How about this? Lack of funding and capital. You know, don't go into this real estate business without some kind of a nest egg. You know what? I am perfectly okay with an agent working this business part-time. I really do. I don't like labels, And I don't like when people say, well, you're a part-time agent. There are people in this business that work it every single day, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, don't do anything,
right,
and don't accomplish anything. And I know part-timers that are making almost 6 figures in the business and blow full-timers out of the water with their commitment and their knowledge. So I'm not hung up on labels. Look, you got to put food on the table. You got to keep a roof over your head. If that means you're doing something else while you're building your real estate business, God bless you. I'm in favor of that. Here's your challenge. You got to be with a company that is new agent and part-time or agent friendly. And a lot of companies are not. And to blow our own horn, of course, one of the reasons why we've grown is we have evening classes. A lot of people that work the business part-time, they're not available during the day. And almost all classes are during the day. So you have to be aware that you need to have either money saved up, and people ask me, well, I got 1 or 2 months saved up. And I go, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. You can't expect to get any kind of a decent paycheck in the first 30 to 60 days. It's more like 90 days or longer. So minimum 3 months, ideally 6 months of reserves, unless you have a spouse or a significant other that's bringing money in, okay? But biggest reason why all small businesses, so many small businesses fail is what? Lack of capital.
Right. When you go into any kind of business, you have to have, like you said earlier, a business plan too. You have to have an idea of where you want to get to, you know, and before you know how to get there. I mean,
right.
You can't just go into a business blindly thinking that the money's just going to start pouring in. You want to make sure that when you go into the business, you have some game plan of where you're going to derive your funding from, and don't assume in that business plan that you're going to be doing, you know, 5 or 6 closings that first month, because it ain't going to happen.
And they're expensive. I mean, you have to join the board of realtors. It's one of the things that really bothers me when I see agents coming out of school, not even aware that one of the biggest expenses they have to make, or investments, is you have to join a local board of realtors so that you can have access to the MLS and everything. Well, that's going to cost you out of the gate easily $800, $850. So make sure that you have money saved up for some marketing, for some other materials that are needed. Next, don't treat real estate as a business. Well, often the people I interview don't have business experience, are not entrepreneurial in nature, don't have marketing experience, don't have sales experience. Woo-hoo! When can you start? You know? And this is the typical person coming into the business. And guess what? You are in business for yourself. People ask me all the time, so what time do I have to come in every day? I go, say what? You know, I go, oh, you got me mistaken for a job. No, this is not a job. You are an independent contractor. You are now in business for yourself. Yeah. And that can be the doom of a lot of people if you don't have a business mindset, right?
Yeah, it's, I mean, and then a real estate agent is very much an entrepreneur. You need to come up with creative ways. You need to come up with unique ways to market yourself.
Yep.
And you got to also, this is not a 9-to-5 job.
No.
You know, I compare it all the time.
9 to 9 at least.
I compare it all the time to being an attorney. It's never a 9-to-5 job. I get up sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm working till late at night because you've got to do what you've got to do to be successful. Yeah. And a lot of people that come from a 9-to-5 mentality are not going to make it as real estate agents because it is not a 9-to-5 job.
No, it isn't.
And clients make certain demands on you that you have to, you have to fulfill.
You have to be accommodating.
Absolutely.
I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning all the time, but it's just to go to the bathroom. So I really I'm sorry, was that even? No, okay, never mind. No sales or business experience. Well, guess what? This business you have to actually close. And you know what? Salespeople have earned a bad reputation, and in many cases it's well earned. When they do studies in terms of how real estate agents are looked at by consumers, how do you compare real estate agents that were slightly above or below used car salespeople? No disrespect to that fine profession, but that's just a fact. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we don't act like business people. We don't behave in a business-like manner, and we don't bring those experiences into the business. Everything changes when you don't have a guaranteed paycheck. So look for ways to create income as quickly as possible. One of our viewers wrote here, rentals are a great place to start. Absolutely, absolutely. And there are agents that will come into the business and say, oh no, I'm not gonna lower myself to the point of working on rentals. Are you kidding me? It's pride or eating.
Short sales are a great place to start.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Look for areas where, at least in a rental scenario, you can get paid quicker. You know, you can get paid in 30 days or less, typically, as opposed to a sale. So obviously do that. Lack of discipline. Well, think about it. When you work for somebody and they want you there 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock, you're going to be there at that time. Why? Because you want your job. Now, what tends to happen is a real estate agent will get their license and then say, I don't have to show up at 8 or 9. I'll show up whenever. And that's the beginning of the end for most real estate agents.
Right. You got to treat it, I think you have to treat, as any independent contractor, you have to treat this as a job. And you have to, every single day when you wake up, you know you have a game plan. You know you have to contact a certain number of contacts that day. You know you need to make a certain number of calls that day. You need to post a certain number of ads, send a certain number of emails that day. If you read all the sales literature out there and all the books on how to be an active and successful salesperson, you have to be disciplined about it and treat it like if it was a job. But I mean, obviously, when you're an independent contractor, you have the flexibility of doing whatever you want.
And that for a lot of people, that could be
very dangerous.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, if you're working 8 to 10 hours for somebody else, why wouldn't you put in that time for yourself?
Or more.
Or more.
Because your family's future depends on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. How about this? Poor training.
Number one.
Yeah, well, this is a famous question, a famous issue here, and I'm going to get to some questions in a second. So the training issue in real estate has really become a problem, and I blame several people. And look, if I don't offend at least 1 or 2 people during a broadcast, I'm not working hard enough.
Right.
But agents brought this upon themselves, and brokers are willing participants in this situation. I call it the potato chip syndrome. No, the potato chip bag syndrome. Remember back in the day?
You have to explain that one.
I plan on it. So remember back in the day, you could buy a bag of whatever this big, and I did for $5, right? And then the manufacturer said, we got to start making more money here, but we can't raise our costs because everyone's going to get mad, right? What did they do? Help me. They reduced the amount. Yeah. Okay, so in our business, agents got this idea that we don't need no stinking broker. We can do this on our own. Okay, I want me some big splits. How much do you want? 115%. Well, I can't go that high. How about 100%? Yes, I want 100%. The broker said, okay, I'll give it to you, but guess what? I'm going to take something away. And it took the training away.
And support. Training and support.
The training and support is gone. And that's what happens. And I can understand, look, if you are a top producing agent, an experienced veteran, you've got a ton of deals under your belt, one could argue that you can fly pretty much solo. You're coming out of the gate as a real estate agent right out of school. You better go into a company that has training, that has support. Now, those two are not synonymous, they're separate. I teach classes all the time where I'm lucky if my audience remembers 40 or 50% of what I taught by the end of the class. What those agents need is when the rubber hits the road and they have a deal, that there's someone on the other end of the phone that they can call.
Right, and to be able to come back to you and attend those training sessions over and over again. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't tell you how many agents I've dealt with that they're very surprised and shocked about how much training Xtreme does for its agents, how much support Xtreme has for its agents. I mean, the fact that you have a training facility right in your main office is huge. I mean, usually a lot of these facilities, a lot of these offices don't have a training facility.
They don't commit to it. Well, just because, you know what, not to interrupt, but, and I've been through this, they don't equate the training space to dollars coming in. They're looking at the dollars per square foot and they're going, hey, in that same space I can put 5 desks, I can put 10 desks. That's where the real money is. We're cultivating, we're planting seeds, we're building the real estate successes of the future. So yeah, at first it was very difficult, but now we're seeing the fruits of those efforts and what's coming out. We got a question here.
By the way, I mean, this is what we're doing right now, Facebook Live, and we're training the people that are out there on what to do, what not to do. We're giving them information. I mean, this is if they had any doubt in their mind about what Xtreme stands for, this is what we do. This is what we do. We train our agents, we work with our agents, we make sure they have every tool available to them so that they can be the very best agent and the very best resource for their clients out there.
Agreed. Question on Facebook is, can a new agent advertise homes on their website that are not their own or from their office simply by having a disclaimer that says courtesy of? This, you have to be exceptionally careful in this area. There's a product, a service called IDX, which stands for Internet Data Exchange. And almost all the website, if not all the website providers, have access to this. And basically what IDX is, it's a subset of the MLS. It gives you the ability to showcase listings from your website, and it removes the listing agent's information, which is awesome, but it must say courtesy of the listing office. It must always have that. So that's already a function that's built into that. The big issue is when an agent picks and chooses, cherry picks a listing to put individually in their website, that's when they can run afoul of MLS rules. You cannot advertise somebody else's listing without their permission. And if you want to be technical about it, the listing agent can give you permission all day long. The listing technically belongs to their broker. Now, most brokers, including myself, will say, listen, if the listing agent's okay with it, I'm okay with it. But you as an agent, don't advertise another agent's listing without getting written permission in the form of an email. Now, the other question becomes, can I grab photos? Can I grab photos? No. The MLS rules changed, what, Jeff, about maybe a year and a half ago? Yeah. And they started coming down on that. So the photos belong to the listing agent as well, and you just can't grab photos without their permission either. But look, unless an agent has a real issue, why wouldn't they let you advertise their listing?
Right. The more people that see the listing, the more likely it is that the property will sell.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when people ask us all the time, hey, we have an Xtreme listing, can we advertise it? Go for it. It benefits everyone. But that could be a great way, if you're a newer agent, to have properties to showcase. Now, start within your own office. You would think that within your own office, you guys would have some kind of permission structure, carte blanche or otherwise, to advertise each other's listings. But some offices are real picky about that. I never understood that. I've talked to other brokers and said, hey, can we advertise your listings? I'll give you permission on the broker level. You give me permission on your broker level. Well, I'd rather you ask my agents individually. And I go, say, what are you the broker for then? And if I say, do you really want me calling each of your agents individually to ask them permission? You really want them speaking to me? Maybe a common sense class is something that's in order. Last thing you want, folks, is for me to be speaking to one of your agents. Trust me. Okay? So advertise our listings, but do it the right way. Make sure that you're giving the disclaimer on there. Right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And I've talked to agents before about what they can disclaim, what they can advertise. I mean, one of the things that I highly recommend that agents advertise is whatever credentialing they have, whatever certifications they have. Advertise it as much as possible, because that's what's going to stand you out from the crowd. And I can tell you, both as a consumer that has purchased homes in the past, and as someone that's an attorney who has represented agents, I look at a lot of advertisements, and I have to make sure, personally from my standpoint, my advertising has to be very, very specific. But from an agent's standpoint, you advertise as much as you can regarding your credentials.
And you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a bigger point, and Lisa asked a question, what about if it's a for sale by owner that just has the listing in the MLS? Well, think about it. If they're just doing a flat fee arrangement or a limited representation, the broker doesn't even care in those scenarios, because all the broker is doing is putting it in the MLS. So would owner permission be sufficient? My humble opinion, yes, because it's really a for sale by owner is what it is. And one of the things out there you guys have to do is, if it's a for sale by owner, and they may believe that they could sell the home themselves, and I'm not saying they can't. There are some scenarios where someone can't sell the home themselves. But we find that 80+% of for sale by owners end up listing with a real estate brokerage. So there's something to be said for those numbers. When it's all said and done, you can approach a for sale by owner and ask them if you can hold an open house on their property. Why would a for sale by owner not give you that permission? They're probably willing to pay you some kind of commission if you bring the buyer. And even if you don't bring a buyer, how many potential buyers can you pick up from being there? And by doing this service for them, they're seeing that you're doing things that the other agents are not. And maybe by the time they finally admit that they need to hire a real estate agent, you position yourself in the first place, right?
You showed that particular seller that you're going to be a resource for them, that you're going to be someone who has the energy and the enthusiasm to do your work with passion, whereas other people have just abandoned that potential opportunity.
Yeah, now blind advertising. This is what I'm reaching out to my realtor buddies out there, because I see way too many of you breaking the rules, okay? When you advertise, and Facebook included, I think people think social media doesn't come under this. Of course it does. If you're advertising a property on your personal page in Facebook as an example, and you're not identifying your brokerage, that is blind advertising, and isn't that a third-degree misdemeanor or something like that? They don't shoot you or anything yet for that, but shy of that is not good, right?
I think the penalty now is 20 lashes.
20 lashes. Whew. Okay, so guys, look at your advertising. 2 critical things that all real estate advertising must have: the last name of the real estate agent as they are licensed, and the company name. Doesn't have to have the company phone number. You can't put "call Jim." Okay, that's not kosher. Okay, you can call Martinez. You can just say Martinez, but it must have your last name and it must have your company name on there. So be careful. Look at your advertising and see if maybe inadvertently or maybe deliberately you've been doing some blind advertising out there. All right, failure to embrace technology. Oosh. Okay, so the reality is that everything has changed in this business. And a lot of our deals, our contracts are being done on these devices right here. So if you're coming into the business or in the business and you are technologically challenged, then I'm going to challenge you to get over that, because you are going to have a tough time staying in this business if you can't be accessible on these devices.
Well, listen, Tony, there's something to be said for referrals, and referrals are great. Okay, back in the day, I used to get probably 80%, 85% of my business from referrals, client referrals, other attorneys that would refer business to me. That has completely changed. Whereas now I get 85% of my business through internet referrals.
Okay.
So people are no longer going out to their buddies and to their friends and asking for referrals. They're going straight to the internet. They're Googling. And if you're not in that mindset, if you believe that you're just going to ignore the tidal wave of technology that's hitting us right now, if you're going to ignore the fact that search engine optimization is a must for anyone that has a website, you're going to lose out on tremendous opportunities. And that's why we constantly invest. You have to change your marketing strategy. I mean, if your marketing strategy is geared towards referrals, and that's fine. I mean, you can go out after referrals, and you should continue going after referrals, but you should really consider about investing a significant amount of your marketing dollars in internet-based advertising.
Well, I use an example. Primarily now, we offer all of our agents a website when they join us. And I even tell them, I go, listen, it's good to have, because just like you have to have a business card, you really have to have a website. But everything right now is about apps. And the vast majority of people searching are using mobile devices and search apps. So as a real estate agent, one of the best ways to embrace technology, one is learn your contracts, how to do your contracts through technology, whether it's Form Simplicity or it's Dot Loop. You got to embrace these two. But from a marketing standpoint, get an app. Now, if you're with a company that provides you an app, then you're golden. But once you have an app, anywhere in the world, people can go ahead and search for your properties there. All right, failure to prospect. This is huge. And I want to make sure that we stay on target, because the next segment is going to be Ask Our Lawyer. And then in the final 15 minutes, I want to talk about how you can get offers accepted. One of the biggest challenges agents and consumers are facing is that they're being constantly outbid, and they're frustrated because their deals aren't being accepted. So I have a few things to share with you. But you got to prospect, and that means you have to actually pick up the phone. Now, the biggest difference between marketing and prospecting is that in marketing, you throw stuff out there, you see what sticks, and hopefully someone will call you. But that's great if you have resources, if you have advertising dollars to spend. When you don't have that, you have to pick up the phone and call. So if your marketing strategy is saying prayers over this device, saying, please Lord, let it ring. Some areas, come on baby, make it happen. That is Martinez just goes, did you just do that? Yes. And some people in the right areas, you know exactly what I did. So that's not marketing. Prayer is good. I'm a prayerful guy, but you actually need to do a little bit more than that. How about actually picking up the phone and calling people in your database? Remember back in the day when you joined multi-level marketing and everything, they told you, all right, write down everybody you know. And you had a sheet of paper. Everybody knows 200 and 300 people. And you're like, okay, Aunt Betty, Tia Juana, Tio Pepe. And you go, I only got 3. But now you got them all here. Everybody's got an incredible database right here. How about you call them and introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself as a real estate agent? So guys, I wish I could go into a lot more detail. These are classes I teach that are 2 and 3 hours long. I got 15 minutes. No direction and business plan. This is critical. How do you know where you're going if you haven't laid out a course? I like to work backwards. I always tell agents, how much money you want to make? Okay, take that amount of money and break it down to the ridiculous so that you know exactly how many leads per day you have to generate. If you can't tell me how many leads per day your efforts must generate, you haven't developed a plan. Okay? Now, a couple of things. To be successful, you must stop, and we'll conclude on this, heavy on the stop. Getting ready to get ready. I see this happen all the time, right, Jeff?
1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, 4 to get ready.
If you are a real estate agent watching this, and you go to every single class that's been made available by your broker, somebody else's broker, some board or realtor, and you are afraid to go out into the real world, you are getting ready to get ready. There comes a point where you have to get out of the sheltered environment and you actually have to go talk to a human being. So you don't make money being in a classroom with a bunch of other realtors there. Great for training and everything. The rubber hits the road, you got to talk to some people. Quit wasting time. I have this joke within my office, and my agents, for some strange reason, they get me and they love me. Maybe Carmelo, yeah, maybe Naya, as a verdict still out. But people go to me and say, Tony, you never asked me how my weekend was. And I go, you want to know why? Yes, I don't care. And they look at me like, are you serious? I go, yeah. You know why? Because I'm not running a social club here. Now, when we have social mixers and everything, I'm the happiest go-lucky guy in the world. And don't you dare put freestyle music on, because I'll dance your butt off. But when it's work, when it's business, you come here to work. Okay? Every time, the most 2 precious things we have is our experience and our time. Those resources cannot be wasted. So don't come into the office and spend the first 30 minutes socializing with everyone around you to find out how their weekend was and how all this thing was. Take the mentality that, you know what, there's a time and place for that. This isn't it. Next, waiting for the phone ring. We talked about that. You got to get aggressive. Listening to negative comments. I almost never put a water cooler in here because I know what happens near water coolers. People get near them and start talking. You know what? We all have issues. Every single office has someone that's going through a divorce, problems with their kids, health issues. But an office needs to be a safe haven. When people walk in that door, it needs to be a place where you can leave those troubles there. Because let me ask you something. How is not making any money going to make your situation any better?
Yeah, and there's always a critic, right? I mean, there's always a critic that's willing to give some negative comment, some negative information to everyone. Right? So one of the things I always tell my staff, and I impart upon my staff, is don't let the negative criticism take any space in your head.
Yeah.
Because we have so much more important things to do than allowing negative criticism to take space in your head. So allow that negative criticism to stay out.
Yep.
And focus on what you
just
have
walk
to
away.
do.
Just walk away from that. Quit living in the past. A lot of us, the reality is a lot of us didn't choose real estate as our first profession. We got downsized. We got fired. We got laid off. Maybe I'll try real estate. You know, I don't know what brought you into this business. Maybe it's a bunch of things went wrong to bring you into this business, but living in the past is not going to get you anywhere. Don't make excuses. We're in a society right now where it's always somebody else's fault. You didn't make any money last month? It's not your broker's fault. Okay, it's your fault. Because I know agents right now with lousy brokers, lousy companies, and they're making money. Why? Because they're doing what they need to do. So this is tough love. A lot of people don't necessarily like to hear this because maybe they like the warm, cuddly thing. Like, no, that ain't me. You know, if you want someone to tell you what you want to hear, there's other folks. This is just the real deal. So, we'll touch more on this in future shows, but for right now, the long-awaited Ask Our Lawyer segment. And I have a question right out of the gate for you, man. You ready? You sure you're ready?
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I'm waiting. I'm lying in wait.
Yeah. Okay, so folks in Facebook, send me your questions. So I got a good one for you. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. So,
You never put me on the spot, Tony.
Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no, you didn't. That is just a challenge right there, man. I'm going to find this obscure thing in the contract and ask you. And contracts, okay, so let's say it's the as-is contract. The deadline is today, okay, for whatever, inspection, blah, 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 okay. What is today? Is today 5 o'clock or is today 11:59?
No, close of business is 5 o'clock. Today is 12 o'clock, midnight. Okay, so if you're doing a closing, if anything is due on a particular day, it's through the end of that day.
Okay.
And unless it says in the contract, close of business. So if you had a contract and you were going to pick a closing date,
Yeah.
and in the addendum to the contract, you say it's the closing shall be by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time,
Right.
on such and such a date, then that's what it is. But if it's just by March 15th, it's not closing
They have it for
business.
11:59.
It is to the end of the day on March
Right.
15th.
Because it's what happens is there are people out there that is confusing because it's left vague. And some people, I've had equal number of people say, well, it's close of business, but that's not what the contract says. Now, if you want the contract to read that, write that in. Here's a scenario. Let's say, for example, this is a good one. Okay, let's all agree it's 11:59. Call it midnight, right? What time is it in California? 9 o'clock.
Right.
So whose timeline are we using unless you stipulate that it's going to be Eastern? We should be using the timeline of wherever the property is located.
Wherever the property is located. So if you've got a buyer that is out in California,
Right.
and that buyer has to sign a counteroffer by such and such a date, that buyer has to provide the counteroffer by the the end of that day where the property is located. So if they're buying a property in the Atlantic Seaboard in Florida and they're living in California, they need to provide the information or the counteroffer or whatever it is by our time zone, not by their time
So
zone.
it might be something that if you are working with a buyer that's not in the same time zone as where the property they're purchasing is, that would be a great line item to include in the contract.
Yeah, I always tell agents, and we've talked about this before, it's very, very important to make sure that if there's any type of question or detail that's not
Typo!
if
How top get your...
there, well,
Sorry, don't worry about it.
listen, it happens.
It does.
It happens. It happens to the best of us.
And it just did.
Like I always say, if there's any detail that's left undefined, it can come back to bite you.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure, and I use this term over and over again. I use it in my office. I use it with my clients. I use it with agents. Make the implied express.
Yeah, that's been sitting. That's because we talked about, is email enough? No, not necessarily. So let's do this as we continue to take any other questions that may be. In the interest of time, because you can also chime in on this. This is something, and yes, I did get carried away and I put a P in there. So it's supposed to be how to.
But the thing is that you're thinking about top agents.
That's what it was. That's what it was. To get your offers accepted. So here's a reality. Every single day there's buyers going nuts right now. Why won't they accept my offer? Agents are frustrated. I'm constantly being outbid and everything else. Now again, I could teach an hour and a half on this segment. Let me go ahead and cut it down to 15 minutes. And again, folks, if you have questions, we can take them off air. Send them in. If we can't get to your question during the live broadcast, we'll answer it afterward. So, and we'll have all of our contact information at the very end. But here's some of the things I want to share with you. One is every single time, and let's say you're the agent representing the buyer. And again, you as a potential buyer, I want you to listen in on this too, because you have some input in this. Number one is we all have opportunities throughout the day to either minimize, criticize, or educate people. Not everybody in the real estate transaction is necessarily well versed in real estate. We know that training is a problem in real estate. You're presenting an offer, and let's say it's a VA offer, and the listing agent is pushing back like crazy. Oh no, they don't want to take VA. Well, mostly it's what? Lack of information, lack of education in this area. That is an opportunity for you to say, listen, I understand. Don't say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. But you can say, look, I understand how you feel. I used to feel the same way, but if I may, this is actually a fantastic program, and here's why it would benefit yourself. So take every opportunity as an opportunity to educate and get that deal going. Pick suitable properties. I have a real problem with people that are getting financing and looking at properties that are not financeable. And the mistake that's usually made is to say, oh, this won't qualify for FHA. Well, wait a minute, it doesn't have a roof. Okay, it doesn't qualify for conventional either. Okay, so use some common sense. Regardless of the type of loan program it is, it must be habitable. It must be safe. So if there's issues like that in a property, anything that involves a non-cash deal is something that must be addressed. But be aware going in what your buyer's capabilities are. Maybe they can't handle a fixer-upper because even if it could get financed, they don't have the money to fix it up and all these other issues. So make sure you're looking at suitable properties before you make the offer.
I mean, I don't want to slow your you got a good
road.
mojo going there,
Nice.
but you bring up a really good point about unpermitted work.
Yes.
When you're looking at properties that have unpermitted work, make sure you factor in the fact that you may have to do a retrofit, or you may have to redo all this work to bring it up to code, possibly before you close. The city loves to come by and look at unpermitted work and say, wait a sec, oh, you didn't permit, you're working on this, and that's fine that you got a permit for this, but what about this? And what about that?
Yeah, they find
and what about putting a fence around this area? And what about making sure that you permit this area back here? And all of a sudden, something that would have been maybe a $1,500, $2,000 liability can turn into a $20,000 liability.
And so as this contract, the seller can say, hey, good luck, I'm not doing any of that. We've seen many cases where a garage got converted. The appraiser goes out there and says, we need this to be a garage again. The wall needs to be taken down and the tracks need to be put on. You know who's done that many times? The real estate agents. The buyers have taken the risk of paying to have that done.
Exactly.
In their desperation to have access to that property. These are things to keep in mind. Fair offer price. You know what? One of the worst things that's happened to real estate are these cable shows. I'm not going to name them, I don't want them coming after me, but it's ridiculous what people think is the real world, which really isn't.
Yeah, it's TV.
It's TV. Yeah, it's Hollywood or whatever. The reality is that in most areas of Florida, we're still in a seller's market, which means the seller has to leverage. And if you come in offering ridiculous prices, you're going to be turned down mostly every time. I blame the real estate agents for not having a sit down, an interview, a consultation with the buyers before they ever saw properties to let them know what's going on in the market. And here's an example I like to use, and I've used this before. Let's say a property goes on the market on Main Street, and it's a wonderful regular sale. This is a regular sale, equity sale, not distress. And the agent priced it right and priced it at $350. That goes on the market. I'm gonna speed this up because I want to get done on time. Now, this is just not a real world scenario, but an illustration on how I try to educate agents on educating consumers about what to expect. The property right next door goes on the market the very next day. It's identical to the first one, but it has a label called foreclosure on there. Remember I said about labels? Labels can be dangerous. If you ask the typical real estate agent, this is a scary part, because they're supposed to know. We're in the business. The consumer can come up with whatever number they want, and we can forgive them, right? But if you ask a typical real estate agent, how much should that go on the market for? They come up with crazy numbers like $250, $275. I go, okay, well what about if the third house goes on the market and it's a short sale, so it has that label, short sale. Ooh, that means long sale, right? But it's identical to number 2, which by default makes it identical to number 1. If I mean identical, that means condition everything, right? still, after laying it out like that, there'll be a real estate agent or 10 in a room that'll say, well, that's going to go on the market for $315. And I went, guess what? You all got it wrong. This will go on the market at $350, and that'll go on the market at $350. Why? Because that's what market price is. And if no repairs are needed, if the condition is great, the bank is going to expect to get market price, and the bank in the short sale is expecting to get market price. You know what? One of the best compliments paid to me was an agent that used to be with Xtreme. She's with someplace else right now, but I haven't lost hope. She's coming back. She says she learned this technique from us, and she uses it to this day every single time before she ever shows a property to somebody. So if you as real estate professionals can go ahead and have this conversation with a consumer, you're going to have a better educated consumer that's not going to go into situations and say, well, see if they'll take $250. Why? Give me one good reason why they would take it, and I'll do it.
Right, and let me tell you something else, and this is something that's very important, is people are still, like you say, sometimes they're living in the past, and we have to get away from living in the past. This is not the same market it was 5-6 years ago. It's not the same market it was 7 or 8 years ago,
right,
when you can offer 70%, 80% on a short sale or on a distress sale or an REO. Banks and underwriters are looking at market value plus.
Right.
Market value plus.
Less repair. So in the real world, yes, there's a good chance that foreclosure is going to be torn up. So if there's $80,000 in repairs needed, you factor that in. Market price less $80,000. Short sale, one could argue, shouldn't be as bad. Well, it's $50,000, it's $40,000, whatever. But the whole essence of the conversation is know what market value is, know what the repair values are, and then you can have an intelligent conversation with that buyer, and more offers will be accepted every single day if agents actually started acting like agents and not just taking the direction of the buyer saying, well, throw this number at them. You know.
Right. Hey, can I give the listeners a golden ticket tip that I've used
Go for it. While I read this question
on a bunch of different short sales where I've seen that the market value is not necessarily what the market value is, and the client comes to me and says, well, my roof needs to be repaired, and my the backyard covering needs to be redone, my kitchen needs to be redone, and I say to them, so what's the value of that? Oh, at least $150,000. Well, how do you come up with that? Well, I talked to my friend here, my friend over there. The only way a bank is going to listen to you is if you have some objective criteria in front of them. And what I recommend to clients to do each and every circumstance is to do two things. Number one, get an appraisal from a licensed appraiser. And number two, in your list of contacts, you need to have a GC that will be willing to give you an invoice for all the work that needs to be done, all necessary repair items. I'm not talking about, planting flowers in the front. I'm talking about necessary repair items. List it, itemize it, price it. Most GCs will charge you anywhere from about $225, $250 to give you that list, which you can then provide the appraiser, and the appraiser only with that list will reduce his appraised value of the property.
And photos. Photos are important.
Yes.
Everyone always puts some pretty photos in the MLS, but if you have a situation where there's damage, send photos of the damage along as well.
Just back up whatever offer you're making with objective criteria. Don't assume that the other side is going to be willing to accept what you tell them or take your word for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because you have a vested interest in that. Oh yeah, let me take your word for it since you're the agent making money on this. Of course, your word carries something here. How about this question? At closing, if a seller's package has been mailed out and has not been received at closing, but scanned, signed documents are received from the seller, can the buyer get keys? I think I understand where this question is going, but I think it's more, if you have a scenario where the originals haven't been received, but the scanned copies, do we have a closing? Because I'm going to answer the question about the keys. If the seller is nice enough to hand over the keys, that's a wonderful thing. But until it's funded and the money is sitting in the seller's account, the seller does not have to turn over keys, correct?
Right. This is it's kind of like that dry closing scenario where you have all the docs from the other side in non-original format, and you're not technically going to be able to sign any original documents until the title agent receives all that information and you can actually close. So the closing occurs is when the last party signs the original document.
You know, we should have an entire class on the closing process, because there's so many agents, if they've never done a closing, they don't know to get it. Why won't they give them the keys? They don't have the money.
Right.
Okay, but the closing took place at 5, 6 o'clock. Funding's not gonna happen now until the next day. You know what? Here's a tip, another golden ticket. And I learned this from my wife, who's much smarter than me. Don't do closings whenever possible. Don't do them on Fridays. Whenever possible, don't do it at the end of the month.
And don't start at closing at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is the buyers got the U-Haul sitting in the parking lot, ready to go. And they're like, where's my keys? And the seller decides, I ain't got my money. I ain't giving you no keys. And now, what are they going to do? So I love closing on a Tuesday. I loves me some closings on a Wednesday. You know why? Because if anything can go wrong, it will. And I still have the next day to resolve it.
Next business day.
Next business day. Okay? So another question. Buyers and sellers use Zillow to determine what they think homes are worth in light of the lawsuit filed against Zillow last week. What are agents to say to relay the accuracy of the Zillow pricing? Well, here's the thing. There have been issues with the Zestimates, and if you were to ask 10 agents how much they believe in it, I would say a good portion of them say it's not something that they can they believe in. In the listing agreement, the seller has the right to indicate that they don't want those kind of valuations to be done on their properties. And I think that's probably something, maybe Jeff, you agree that more and more agents should need to start doing is in the listing agreement, check off where it says will not allow third-party valuations and reviews, because that prevents the Zillows of the world from going in there and coming up with a price that may not be realistic. So again, there have been situations where there's estimates have been dead on, and there's situations where they haven't been. Is there a lawsuit in the works? My understanding, yes. Can I comment on it? No. Does it pertain to me? No.
My experience with Zillow is that it's very hit or miss. There's certainly some properties that I've looked at in Zillow, and they're dead on as far as the accuracy between the Zestimate, as you call it, and the appraised value that I've obtained from an appraiser. But there's some properties that are so far off that you have to wonder, how in the world did they come up with these numbers? What kind of formula, what kind of calculation? They're certainly not using appraisers to come up with this. Well, they can't, because there's so many properties out there. So I think that the best course of action, the best thing you can do is try to get an appraiser to come out, and if there's any issues regarding the value of the property, get an appraiser to come out and come up with that.
But the thing is, okay, you get a call, and it's a Zillow customer, potential prospect. That's an opportunity for you. And again, if you're going straight from that phone call to meet them at the property, bad idea. That's not good from a safety standpoint. But then how about this? How about you go from that phone call to let's meet at a local coffee shop and let's get to know each other, and I can then educate you, and then says, let me tell you, what have you been finding out there? What do you see? And say, you know what, at that point I can say, you know what, a lot of these estimates aren't even remotely close. So we as agents, let's just stop pointing fingers at everybody else. Let's take responsibility every time we meet a prospect to educate them on the real world, such as an example like this, okay? Pre-approval letter. And I still see new agents making this kind of mistake. A new agent will get excited. I got a live one. I got a live one. Let's go. No. Pre-qualification letter is not worth the paper it's printed on. I can argue all day long that a pre-approval letter isn't worth anything either, given the technology that we have. I can print a great one. How about this? You get a pre-approval letter, you actually look at the name of the lender. If the lender's name is ABC Mortgage Inc., and they spell Inc. I-N-K, that could be a red flag. Just saying. Okay, so what's better? The DU, the desktop underwriting, is a far stronger indication of that buyer's ability to pay. And the mistakes that happen in this business are incredible. You get a pre-approval letter, great. You don't look and see what the date is on that. You get proof of funds. You know, just because somebody is getting financing, and they're going to put 10 or 20% down, have you verified that they have the 10 to 20%? Have you verified that they have the closing cost? We have scenarios where people have sent in proof of funds and it's not even their account. You have to look at these situations there. If it's cash, where's the money?
Well, what happens with a lot of agents is that they're so driven to make the deal go,
Right.
is that they'll overlook simple details like a proof of funds without an account holder's name, or a proof of funds without an account number.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very important that you don't lose the forest from the trees,
Right.
and you always focus on some of these details that can make go that transaction, and don't be so driven by getting the deal done that you lose some of these details. You need to point some of these details out to your customers if that's necessary, so that you can get the necessary tools you need to get it closed.
Agreed. And look, you're a consumer, you're not a real estate agent, you're looking at this, you're thinking of buying a home. To the extent that the agent you're potentially going to work with is going to require this, it's a good indication whether you're working with a good agent or not. Because a good agent won't even show you property one unless you produce this. Because it makes no sense. We have a responsibility to sellers that we're only bringing people that are ready, willing, and able to buy to come see those properties. If you haven't done your due diligence to make sure these folks are qualified, you're breaking some kind of ethical rule somewhere. So everything is in delivery. Hi, yes, you're interested in this property? Great. Let me ask you a question. Would you be paying cash, or are you looking into some financing options? I don't like to assume right away they need financing. You can insult someone that's got a stack of cash, right? Why do that? And the person says, well, no, I guess in this case, I'm going to get financing. Okay, sure. Okay, all right, so how about this? Have you already spoken with a lender? Yes, I have. Are you as far as getting an actual pre-approval letter? Great. You have it? Good. Send it to me. That's just part of the dance that we do at the very beginning with these prospects. Place a limit on seller repairs. The biggest problem with as-is contracts, one of them, is that buyers don't know that they're as-is. And so you get an as-is, you got a weak agent representing, and yes, weak agent representing a buyer. The buyer does the inspection. The buyer says, oh, I want that light switch replaced. Oh, I can't believe, look at the little spot right there. I want that fixed and I want it now. And the listing agent's got to go, what is it about as is that somehow escaped the equation? So be aware of are you purchasing as is or not? And here's the way I look at it. Folks, once the inspection is done, we can negotiate. We can discuss. Maybe by that time the seller has already been counting their money and they want to get out and they're willing to work with you. But be realistic.
Right.
It's one thing for functional issues. The air conditioner is not working or it's about to go out, as opposed to something cosmetic.
Right. I mean, I usually use the guideline of 1 to 2% of the purchase price as the amount that seller repairs you should be looking at. If the seller repairs are in excess of like 2% of the purchase price, then you really need to be negotiating some of these issues before you go hard on your deposit, or before you get past the inspection period, or before you get past the financing contingency.
Agreed. Personal note from buyers. This is old school, but it works, right? And I gotta tell you, we've become so high tech now that we forget that this is a people business.
This is about how about a personal text from the buyer?
No. I wouldn't want my buyer talking directly to the seller. I still believe, and it should be, that the communication is happening from agent to agent, but a nice handwritten letter from the buyers, milking it for all it's worth about how much they want this property, pictures of the family, kids, dog, you name it. It works.
Yeah.
The typical seller is not some corporation. Now, would that work in a foreclosure, or no? Might it work in a short sale? Yes, and I'll tell you why. In a short sale, the seller still is the one that signs that contract.
Sure.
So if that seller has several to pick from, that personal note,
You gotta make it stand out.
make it stand out. Yes, it then goes to the bank to decide whether financially they'll agree or not. But I tell you, you might strike a chord with that couple that's retiring and they see themselves in that young family buying for the first time, it's not always about money. We see cases all the time of people turning down a better offer, financially better, in favor of doing something for a family.
For sure.
Okay? So as we start to wind down, let's talk about a couple things coming up. As I mentioned before, next Monday, which is June 5th, I'm teaching a class called the Military Residential Specialist. This is geared for real estate agents and lenders and such. It's not a consumer class, but I'm very proud of the fact that I believe that a niche that's completely untapped is helping active military and veterans achieve the American dream. And I think this may come across wrong, I'll live with it. I think too many real estate agents give lip service to wanting to provide service to those that serve us every single day or have served us. If you're a real estate agent and you don't know anything about the VA loan program, you're not a real estate agent. You're not. Because that's a segment of the population that you can't even begin to help. How is it that only 11% of eligible veterans and active military, only 11% use the VA loan program? Most of that is because real estate agents talk them out of it.
Oh yeah, they haven't educated them on it. I mean, sometimes you just have to bring them up to speed on what their options are, for sure.
So if you're an agent, you want this training, it's a one-day class. I'll give you the phone number at the end, call. I'll speak to you personally and answer any questions you have as to what the material is about and if you feel that it'd be worth your time. There's a flyer on that. Next week, I'm going to get confirmation, but we're going to have, we talked about GC, General Contractor.
Yep.
We have a good friend in the business, the owner of Same Day Inspections, Juan Carlos Garcia, who also has his own construction company, General Contractor, and he's approved for the Y Green program. And folks, you're going to love this segment next week because Y Green is an opportunity for you to get 100% financing to get certain things, enhancements, improvements done for your home through the tax system. And we just had storm windows put throughout our entire home using Y Green. So this is something that agents need to know about and consumers need to know about. And since JC is also a home inspector, we want to dovetail on what to look for when you're doing a home inspection. You know, what are some of the common things? And there are some inspectors out there that blow the deal all day long because they blow everything up into being this major crisis. And agents need to understand how the whole inspection process works.
Exactly.
So as we conclude with this week's episode, here's our contact information up here. Tony Martinez, Xtreme Realty Team, is my number. Then we have Omar. There's information. There is your email address. And did I get the phone number right?
You got it. 954-437-9066. We're ready to get your call. We're ready to meet you. And we're ready to help you.
All right, folks. Well, listen, this class, this program will be available now. Continue to share it. Continue to go ahead and come back to it. Don't be afraid to ask us questions offline. Anything that's addressed to Omar, I'll make sure that he gets right away. So again, Mr. Arcia, which do you prefer?
I prefer either one. As long as you call me at 954-437-9066.
It's kind of like Martinez or Martinez, you know, whatever.
Well, when you're up in Lake Placid, they call you Martinez, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, thank you so much. Thank you next time.